They will join the first two accused before the Johannesburg Magistrate Court on 6 November 2025, facing charges of double murder and 5 counts of attempted murder.
It has emerged that the car used by controversial businessman Brown Mokgotsi during his alleged attempted hit was unroadworthy. Mokgotsi claims he was the target of an attempted assassination in Vosloorus in Ekurhuleni last night. He says he was driving the red Chevrolet sedan when unknown suspects in a white bakkie opened fire on him. The vehicle is currently at the Vosloorus police station where ballistic experts are collecting and analyzing firearm evidence. Alpha Ramushana has more.
When police found the red Chevrolet that controversial businessman Brown Mokgotsi was driving during his alleged shooting, the vehicle had no license disc. All 4 tires are also visibly worn out, with the treads faded and barely visible. EWN understands that the car was bought second-hand from a dealership on the East Rand earlier this year. Police spokesperson Athlenda Mate says the details remain unclear, as Mokgotsi has yet to submit a statement about what happened last night.
We have seized the vehicle, as you can see. Well, at this stage, because we are still waiting for Mr. Brown Mokgotsi, it's not yet clear where he was coming from and where he was going. So those are some of the details that we would like to, collect and gather from him.
Police say if it turns out that Mokgotsi lied about his alleged shooting, he could face charges of defeating the ends of justice. Alpha Ramshwana, Eyewitness News, Vosloorus.
We move to the capital, where crime intelligence boss Tumsani Khumalo has revealed that the bodyguard of suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya has a criminal history with multiple convictions. Stuart James Sharnick appeared with Sibiya before Parliament's ad hoc committee last month when Sibiya was called to testify. Testifying before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria today, Khumalo revealed that the white Toyota Hilux that Sibiya was often seen driving is registered under Sharnick's name. Most of Sharnick's crimes were committed in KwaZulu-Natal, dating back almost a decade.
A quick profile of the owner of the car. As I've mentioned, Mr. James is having a total of 34 cases. He was found guilty on 18 of them, and 11 were withdrawn, and 5 he was found not guilty. That is the profile as per our systems.
The Commission has adjourned for the day, with Khumalo set to resume his testimony tomorrow. National Correctional Services Commissioner Mokgoti Thobagale says the recent deadly attack at Pollsmoor Prison was gang-related. 2 officials were injured in last week's attack and 3 inmates died. Thobagale told reporters at a media briefing that the injured officers have since been discharged from hospital. Ntutuzela Nene has more.
Correctional Services Commissioner Mokgoti Thobagale says the deceased inmates were high-ranking members of a prison numbers gang. He says while on cleaning duties, inmates Bonginkosi Jali, Ricardo Kotze and Andre Gous ambushed the official and stabbed them.
The assault began when Mr. Jali emerged from the toilet facility and attacked our official, Somjala, stabbing him. Despite his injuries, Mr. Somjala managed to run to the unit office for assistance. This is where Mr. Ubusho was stationed. The 3 detainees pursued him into the office and continued their attack.
Thobagale says a probe into this incident is still ongoing. Ndutuzelo Nene, Eyewitness News at the Pollsmoor Correctional Facility.
And the G20 Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts says the world is facing an inequality emergency. The committee, led by Nobel laureate Professor Joseph Stiglitz, says this inequality is not only unfair but can disrupt democracy too. It's recommending that South Africa establishes an international panel on inequality to support government. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
In August, President Cyril Ramaphosa established the task team of 6 experts to report to the G20 on the state of wealth and income inequality and their impacts on growth, poverty and multilateralism. As South Africa's G20 presidency draws to a close, the group has produced a more than 60-page report in which it recommends that, similar to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, South Africa establishes one on inequality that can inform and empower policymaking. The panel would be a technical body that would monitor existing and new research and assess gaps in knowledge. It would periodically produce assessments of the impacts of income and wealth inequality on other dimensions, such as health and opportunity. The report finds that 83% of countries, which account for 90% of the world's population, meet the World Bank's definition of high inequality. The experts say the overall income gap between countries of the global north and the global south remains very high. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News.
Gold's trading at $3,960.13 an ounce. The rand's at 17.48 to the dollar, at 22.80 to the pound, at 20.08 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $64.38 a barrel.
In your sport, Pakistan set a victory target of 264 in their first ODI against South Africa. Gayton McKenzie says VAR will now be implemented in 2026, and Kaizer Chiefs look to move up to second in the Betway Premiership standings with victory over Orbit College tonight.
Look at your weather. Partly cloudy skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon thunder showers expected. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 14 degrees and peak at highs of 26. Pretoria also at lows of 14, reaching highs of 28. Verenigings at 15 and 27. Cape Town said to be partly cloudy with moderate southeasterly winds tomorrow at a low of 15 and a high of 26 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour: 3 more suspects involved in the Westbury shooting have been arrested for a double murder.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. EWN Traffic.
Well, in the Calvin Alex area, you can still expect about an hour heading towards Germiston. That's the N3 southbound between the Patroons Change and London Road due to ongoing roadworks. Kloorkoop, Kempton Park area. There's also bumper-to-bumper traffic on Allendale Road. This is between Old Pretoria Road and Zurfontein Road. Slow-moving traffic still heading towards Brakpan. That's in the Boksburg Sunwood Park area. N17 eastbound between Rondebolt and Carnival City due to ongoing roadworks. Also in the Edenvale area, there you can expect about a 30-minute delay heading towards Boksburg. This is on the N12 eastbound between the R24 split and Jet Park Road. This is due to an earlier accident. In the Mother City, slow-moving traffic M3 southbound between Rhodes and Newlands Avenue. Also slow-moving traffic. This is on the M5 southbound between Pinelands and Kenilworth. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, advancing Red Rocket's ambitions with Discovery Green as the off-taker to power Africa's future through affordable, renewable energy. At 9 minutes after 6, good evening, welcome to the program. I'm Stephen Grootes. A big day for the JSE in a way, a big day for Optasia with the listing this morning. Seemed to go very nicely, several times oversubscribed. We'll speak to the CEO, Salvador Anglada, in just a moment, the CEO at Optasia, and I am presuming that he, in fact, will be quite chuffed with how it's all gone so far, and just obviously they have big plans to move into Asia and to South America as well. Looking forward to the conversation around that. I was astonished and in a way not at all surprised to see the new report about inequality put together ahead of the G20. Quite a heavyweight panel, I must just say. It was an extraordinary committee of independent experts on global economy, on global inequality. President Cyril Ramaphosa sort of responsible for putting it together. I was surprised, though, by the extent of how things have changed. So we see so quickly that the richest 1% captured 41% of the new wealth that's been created in the last period. And when you consider what's happened in that time, so COVID, I'm sure, had something to do with it. Also, of course, what you see around with the sort of creation of the tech economy, if you like, you really start to see this coming through. How do you fix it? Through tax. Who are very good at getting out of tax? I'll give you a hint. Rich people. We will talk about that on the Money Show in just a moment. Looking forward, in fact, to speaking to Professor Jayati Ghosh around that. Chafiwa Chifengwes, he is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. Some data suggesting there's been a big surge in tourism. We'll talk online gambling, budget insurance, having very strong comments to make around that. And then also the contribution mining makes to our economy. All of that to come in the next hour. Good to hear from you tonight. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567, and of course voice notes on 072 702 1702.
702.
702.
Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
A big day for Optasia this morning. The fintech company listing on the JSE. Shares were several times oversubscribed. It did list at 19 Rand a share, reached a market cap of 23.5 billion Rand. The CEO at Optasia is Salvador Anglada. Salvador, good evening. Good to talk to you again, and thank you for the time. Must have been a good feeling this morning, first to see the listing and to see the valuation.
Yeah, I mean, we started this morning, 9 o'clock, and the shares was listed, and it was a good day for us because the index were going down, and we finished the day in positive. So, absolutely glad to see the whole celebration and to see the response of the people in a day like today.
The investment by First Rand just last week, a week before you listed, they bought 20.1% of you. That must have been a big vote of confidence. I mean, that would have given you some momentum, I'm sure.
It is. I mean, at the end, having one of the biggest bank of the country, giving that confidence in our model, supports all what we're doing, and our credit scoring. I mean, give us, as you said, confidence, and it allowed us to oversubscribe. I mean, the IPO multiple times, and also to allow us to be on the top of the range at the end at 19 ZAR as the one that we fix it. So you are totally right, and also the quality of the investors that came into our book and into our that today, I mean, they will keep it, I mean, the actions and the shares for the future.
You're now looking at going into Asia and into South America. These are new spaces for you. What are you looking to do there? You're gonna look for assets to buy there, rather, companies to buy there?
Not necessarily. I think we're growing organically in Asia, Southeast Asia. We have presence today in Philippines, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and you will see that we will continue expanding there. Potentially, if there is anything that allowed us to accelerate our growth, yes, we will go through it inorganically, but there is nothing in our agenda so far. We are observing, we are looking at it, and as I said, I mean, the plan today is organic, and with big eyes looking at potential inorganic opportunities.
Do you find that those are different markets to what you're used to? Are they a bit more competitive? I mean, I imagine Asia would particularly be a lot more competitive in the fintech space.
Well, in the airtime space, we are quite active and successful on the microfinance. It's a different model. I mean, if you look at Africa and the Sub-Saharan Africa, you have the mobile money and the mobile wallets dominating the space, with the mobile operators in most of the cases taking ownership. Asia, as you said, is different. There is these two elements: the telco operators and the mobile wallets are in different hands. But for us, I mean, it's absolutely fine to look for partners that are able to allow us to enter in the market. Super apps, digital banks, this is what we're looking for and what we are working on. And I hope that you will see very good news in the near future.
With all of the expansion plans that you have, you've been growing strongly on our continent in Africa. You're in the Middle East. You're looking at Asia, South America as well. How important is South Africa, where obviously the JSE is based? I mean, there's clearly a lot of room for growth here in what you're doing.
Always, and it's a great country, but it's quite developed, as we have mentioned several times. It's the population that it's unbanked is not as big as other places, and the bank system is quite modern. You have also digital banks. So what I'm saying is that we have a lot of presence in the airtime credit solution, and we need to find the right space to enter as well on the microfinance. And this is what we're doing, trying to find out what is the right partner to go through.
Salvador Anglada, I really appreciate the time on a busy day. Thank you. The CEO of Optasia, listing today on the JSE. It's 6:15.
The Money Show on 702.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 8 p.m.
Well, a new report published today ahead of the G20 suggesting that over the last sort of 24 years or so, the richest 1% of the world's population have been able to gain 41% of all of the new wealth created. The Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts on Global Inequality says 83% of the world's countries have high inequality.
the higher the level of inequality in a country, the less likely that country is to be able to deepen its democracy. Or to put it another way, the more at risk it is of sliding away from democracy. One of the people on the panel is Professor Jayoti Ghosh, a professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, on the line, in fact, from the US. Professor Ghosh, good day to you, and thank you for your time. What happened over the last 24 years that created this dynamic? Is it about the rise of the tech economy? Did the pandemic maybe play a role as well?
Yes, these are certainly factors, but what we have seen are the major drivers of inequality are really the policies and regulations that were unleashed from about the mid-1980s onwards in various countries and in the world as a whole. So what we find is that this massively increased inequality is not something inevitable. It's not just the outcome of technological change or anything like that. It's policy-driven and regulatory practice-driven, and therefore it can be undone by governments. So it's a policy choice, it's a political choice.
I mean, the argument from the sort of other side of this would have been that from those changes in the 1980s and the 1990s, it also made countries wealthier. It grew economies. Now, I realize there's a problem if only one part of society benefits from that. But isn't it true that those reforms also unleashed economic growth?
They unleashed economic growth in some parts of the world. And of course, China is always presented as the great example and the major sort of extreme case of this dramatic increase in growth and poverty reduction. But in large parts of the world, you will find that people are not much better off. And also in many countries where per capita income has been increasing, you find that average wages have not increased. And many people are actually living in greater conditions of insecurity. But one of our key findings is not just about the fact that people at the bottom are not necessarily getting better off or are leading more fragile lives. It is that the extreme concentration of wealth and incomes at the top leads to extreme concentrations of power. And that has very bad consequences because it allows the powerful to influence regulations, legislations, and policies in their favor, and it worsens inequalities. And that is what also then creates frustration, alienation, resentment, and the kinds of social and political instabilities that we are seeing across the world.
I suppose, to put it another way, if you look at what's happened with what people call the tech bros, the Jeff Bezoses, the Elon Musks of the world, the Mark Zuckerbergs in the US, you can probably see the same kind of thing happening in many other parts of the world at the moment too, that deepening inequality, a few very rich people who are then able to influence policy to their benefit.
Yes, we find that this is true in most countries. In fact, the greater proportion of countries have experienced significantly increased inequality. But what we also find is that we are now at levels of global inequality of both economic property and power that we have never seen before. So the tech pros and other extremely wealthy that you mentioned are not just powerful in their own countries, they're powerful globally. And they use their assets and their extreme economic wealth to influence policies and governments all over the world.
If you look at the current trends, if nothing is done, and I think it might be hard to do something, but I'm going to come to that in a moment, if nothing is done, would you expect these trends to simply deepen? Inequality will, on the current trends, presumably just get a lot worse and quite quickly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the world is on track to get its first trillionaire within a few years. And we are going to get much more extreme concentration of wealth. We already see that the top 1% garnered nearly half of the increases in income over the past few years. So yes, this is likely to get much worse simply because of what I've mentioned, that the extremely rich are also extremely powerful in terms of influencing how states respond.
One of these reforms you suggest is sort of reforms of tax policies around the world. This is something all countries would really have to agree on, otherwise there'll be a sort of, a kind of race to the bottom. Isn't it going to be very difficult to get the world to do anything substantive here in a coordinated manner? And the rich, of course, are going to campaign strongly against it.
Yes, that's absolutely true. The rich will campaign against it, and we certainly have some large, powerful countries that are openly saying that they would not go along with this, the US, for example. But these are processes that, it's kind of bizarre because people across the world do not benefit from this. Every taxpayer in every country loses out because, in fact, the rich, whether they are rich corporations or very rich elites, pay a fraction of the tax that ordinary people pay in relation to their income and assets. So it's in the interests of people across the world. So can we get a politics that will generate greater demand for this? I think in many countries we already have. And it's true that right now there are some country governments that are actively opposing it. But, these things change. And when there is a very strong momentum on the other side, I think it's possible to actually get a greater number of countries agreeing and, in fact, eventually an international agreement as well. We have negotiations at the United Nations which are proceeding well, even though the U.S. has decided not to participate. And there is hope in such negotiations.
Professor, I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Jayati Ghosh is Professor of Economics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a member of that panel. The panel is the Extraordinary Committee of Independent Experts on Global Inequality. There'll be a lot more conversations about this, I'm sure, heading into the G20.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes.
Well, some evidence now that some parts of our tourism sector seem to finally be rebounding. The number of visitors here between April and September, just over 7.5 million people. That's 1 million more than last year. Chifiwe Chifengwa is the CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. Chifiwe, good evening. That really does look like very strong growth. What's driving it?
Indeed, it's a strong growth, Stephen, and good evening to you and to your listeners. It is a strong growth. This represents about 17% increase if you look at January to September versus 2024 versus 2025. But what's even more important is to note that on the overseas arrivals, these are outside of the African continent, we did saw about a 10.5% increase on the arrivals, which are the markets that are, a big source market, that touches most of the value chain. But majority of the tourists that are coming in still comes from the SADC region and Africa air markets. They form part of the larger arrival. But it's a positive trend. If you look at all the markets, if you look at Europe, you'll see that the growth is about 9.5%. North America sitting at 7.4%, and Australia, or Australasia, as in Australia and New Zealand, sitting at around 26%. So it's good growth. It shows that the work that the private sector have been doing for the past few years in marketing South Africa as a preferred destination, and the work that we did about 2 years ago when we had the Trevor Noah campaign to ensure that people are aware of what South Africa has to offer is starting to pay off, because you need a lead time of at least 2 years for anything that you do to start to show some positive results. Overall, it's good to see these numbers. We need to note that we're still not there yet in terms of recovery to pre-pandemic levels. We're probably hovering at around 90%, but positive trend, and we hope that the work that we put in by the end of the year will show some good results versus 2019 numbers.
And the people who are coming, I mean, it's another 1 million people. Where are they going? Is it just the Western Cape, or are there other places that are benefiting as well?
Well, there are other places that are benefiting as well, but the issue of geographical spread of tourists is still a major problem. Because what we have seen is that from the overseas arrivals point of view, so if you take that alone, you will see that the traffic is now focusing on Cape Town and the Kruger National Park. And Kruger National Park in the main, the southern part of the park. So other places are not getting a fair share of those tourists that are going to be coming in, especially from overseas. And that's something that we're starting to work on to say, how do we spread, these tourists to other parts of the country so that we can have some sort of a better geographical spread, and also we can avoid the issue of one destination being fully booked, and that may have an impact on the price because of the demand and supply. But other parts of the countries, you'll find that they're still open. So we still need to do more to make sure that we spread. But on the SADC side, you can say that most of the people that come here for shopping, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Lesotho are still the top markets into the country. But again, there you still need to do more, check into the figures in terms of those that depart back home. So the length of stay there is the one that's going to give us a determination who's coming for what.
Jafiwa Chifengwa, good to talk again. Thank you very much indeed. CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, 26 after 6.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Anthony Modasani, as you know, a regular on the program, a senior equity sales trader at Absa CIB. Anthony, good evening. Thanks so much for coming in. Optasia, quite a strong debut, isn't it?
Yeah, Stephen, thanks for having me. Always good to be here. Strong start. Nice to have a new listing, not a delisting happening on our market. Was up 2% on the trading session. Decent amount of shares exchanging had, so investors had something to cheer and get excited about.
Obviously, their future plans are going to be really important. I was interested in the comment there from the CEO that South Africa is quite a developed market. There's a lot of competition in the digital fintech space here.
Yeah, he didn't want to put his foot in that one too quickly, right? So I think it's interesting, especially when, it's in terms of the micro-lending space that he spoke about, and obviously Capitec very strong in that market. So I think, they're going to take their time trying to figure it out. They've got good partnerships with Vodacom and MTN. So I think, got to dig through the data, see where the real opportunity is and where they can get an advantage.
Quite a big sell-off in gold and platinum group metals today. You saw that in the resources side. You saw it in the shares. You saw it as well, though, in the platinum and the gold price.
Yeah, 100%. So, gold's been oscillating around that 4,000 level, and it's been, it's really been a bit of a tug of war between the bulls and the bears. I think, you're just finding yourself in an environment where there isn't really much to justify the next leg higher. If you've been holding gold since $2,000 per ounce, why not sell some out here? So I think, you just find a bit of profit taking. There was a bit of dollar strength in the market, so that will trigger sort of the knock-on reactions that you are seeing. And if you just panned over to our gold stocks at this point in time, they've had such a tremendous run, right? So it gives an excuse of why not try to take some chips off the table at this point.
It's interesting because what this does to the JSE, it got to 110,000. It's at 106,000. But only 3 months ago it was at 100,000. So on, sort of the last few weeks it looks terrible. Over the year it looks fantastic.
Yeah, no, well that's the thing, right? And this is what we've been waiting for. Is we hope, well, when I say waiting for, is when these gold stocks do have the reason to come lower, are we going to see SA investors start to switch into your SA Inc. names? So your banks, your retailers. Retailers didn't catch that much of a bid today. Banks, they were flat, so given on a softer session on the global market trading tape, they held up fairly well. But, we want to see more of that rotation. We want to see SA investors really start to rotate into your SA Inc. names and support the stocks there.
Palantir, one of the big sort of names of the Magnificent Seven in the US, a bit of a disappointment, it seemed, for most investors.
Yes, I think that's what a lot of people are pointing to through the cat amongst the pigeons today, right? So their results were actually okay, and they're guided for revenue to do well, but it's lofty valuations, right? So it's justifying, is there another leg higher in this like AI frenzy and AI rally that we're seeing? And that doesn't seem to be the case. It wasn't enough to justify another leg higher. So the stock was down 8% in sort of the US pre-market trading. When I left the office just now, it was down about 5% So, I think you're just finding that investors are struggling to justify continuing to buy the stocks at these elevated levels.
The CEOs of Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, they're coming to my place later. That's a joke. But they're in Hong Kong at the moment. Yeah. Both of them suggesting that there might be... Now, you've got to choose your word carefully here because, correction would be a good English word. I think Reuters used the word drawdown. And that seems to have really played into the open in the US.
So, it's when there's negative news, people will look for sensationalist reasons to it. The caveat is they did say over the next 12 to 24 months, right? So, that's over a given time frame. They weren't calling for a sharp correction in the market. And again, it just speaks back to valuations. They're just talking about a market that, if you look at the S&P since those April lows, I think it's up about 45%. The S&P equal weighted index is only up 25%, right? So there's a big disparity between the two, right? So there's a lot of stocks that just haven't shifted and haven't performed as well as your Mag 7 and your mega cap tech stocks. So maybe it's more so going to be the rotation that starts to happen in the near future over the next while. And, net, you'll see it down to. But it's certainly not happening in one big move. And maybe over a beer later you can chat to them and ask them more about that.
Anthony Modasani, thanks very much indeed at Absa CIB. They'll pay. Just gone 6:30. Time for the latest Eyewitness News. Marky, good evening. A year and a day from now, what's going to be happening?
Well, Stephen, the Electoral Commission says it's preparing to be ready to hold local government elections by the first Wednesday of November next year. Good evening. According to the body, the polls can be held between the 2nd of November 2026 and the 30th of January 2027. The IEC held a media briefing in Centurion today to update the public on its election preparedness. Tabiso Gobo was there.
COGTA Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa has the sole prerogative of announcing the dates for the local government elections. He does this in consultation with the IEC, taking into account a number of factors, including school exams, the festive season period, and weather patterns. IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Masego Sheburi says the Commission is preparing for every possible scenario.
Its role is to stand ready at the first day on which an election may be called. Because if we do not stand ready on that day, we are invariably taking away the decision making from the minister. So we stand ready to administer an election on the first Wednesday in November.
Sheburi says the IEC doesn't have any indication of when the COGTA minister plans to announce the election dates. Tabiso Goba, Eyewitness News, Centurion.
Embattled crime intelligence boss Timsani Khumalo has told the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry that the traditional way of investigating is not suitable for probing organized crime. Khumalo says this is why it was necessary to shift to analysis-driven investigations when looking into the murder of engineer Armand Swart. Khumalo was back before the inquiry today, more than a month after he fell ill. Swart was shot dead while seated in his vehicle outside his workplace in 2024. It was reported that the assassination was orchestrated to silence him after he blew the whistle about fraud and corruption linked to a Transnet tender. Khumalo says the investigation into his murder needed a high-level police team.
So for that, we needed an expert in the firearm area, from the importation to registration to managing or controlling those firearms. And we also had to request an investigating officer.
Khumalo is set to resume his testimony tomorrow. The City of Cape Town has deployed a team to conduct emergency repairs at a sinkhole in Khayelicha's SST section of Town 2. The Metro has, however, warned affected informal structures have been built illegally on essential water and sanitation infrastructure. It adds these homes had prevented it from repairing a damaged sewer line, but Good Party councillor Roscoe Palm remains critical of the city.
The claim that the city cannot act without relocation is deeply concerning. Safety cannot be conditional. It is unacceptable that residents continue to live in danger due to collapsing infrastructure in the City of Cape Town and bureaucratic delays.
The city has since started temporarily filling the sinkhole and offering relocation services to affected residents that will allow it to fix a sewer line. And Asian e-commerce giant Shein has today pledged to cooperate fully with French judicial authorities after an uproar over it selling childlike sex dolls. Shein also says it's prepared to disclose the names of people who bought them. The Paris prosecutor's office said it had opened investigations against Shein and also rival online retailers AliExpress, Temu and Wish over the sale of sex dolls after France's anti-fraud unit reported on Saturday that Shein was selling childlike sex dolls. The controversy comes as the ultra-fast fashion giant is set to open its first bricks-and-mortar store in the world and the prestigious BHV department store in central Paris tomorrow. Shein spokesman in France, Quentin Rifat, says they will put the necessary safeguards in place to ensure that this does not happen again, additionally describing what had happened as serious, unacceptable and intolerable. He chalked up the sale of the dolls to a malfunction in their processes and governance. A look at your weather. A partly cloudy Wednesday in store for Gauteng with afternoon thunder showers expected tomorrow. Temperatures will drop to overnight lows of 14 and 15 degrees and peak at highs between 26 and 28 degrees. Cape Town said to be partly cloudy with moderate southeasterly winds at a low of 15 and a high of 26 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. The Electoral Commission says it's preparing to be ready to hold local government elections by the first Wednesday of November next year.
EWN Traffic.
In the Calvin Alex area, we still have bumper-to-bumper traffic. This is on the N3 southbound between the Between to Change and London Road due to ongoing roadworks. Midrand, slow-moving traffic N1 southbound between Allendale and the Batroot interchange. We still have slow-moving traffic as well in the Kempton Park area on Allendale Road approaching Zeerfontein. In Boksburg, or rather heading towards Boksburg, there's an accident seen in Germiston. This is on the N12 eastbound near Croft Road, causing some delays all the way from the R24 split. There's also slow-moving traffic. This is in the Mother City M3 southbound between Rhodes Avenue and Newlands. Also bumper-to-bumper traffic in this is M5 southbound between Pinelands and Kenilworth. Also N2 outbound, expect some delays on Mowbray Main approaching Airport Approach. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072 702 1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Mr. Govender, congrats on the retirement. You just sold your car to We Buy Cars. Tell us about it.
Yes, it just gathered dust in the garage, so I exchanged it for cold hard cash. Now my wife and I can enjoy a stress-free retirement.
Retiring the car as you retire. Nice. So why We Buy Cars?
It was so quick. They came over to our house to do the evaluation, and we sold it the same day. Tops, man.
Okay, so now you got even more time on your hands, eh?
Exactly.
We Buy Cars. Geared for your next chapter. Geared for you.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. And it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We're also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct. To give you balanced programming, fair comment, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we're not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024. For more, visit bccsa.co.za.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
We've been talking about inequality, we've been talking about tourism, we've been talking about Optasia already on the Money Show. Still to come, online gambling, but already voice notes coming through around AI stocks and what's going on in the US.
Hi there. You were just discussing in one of your items that people can't justify the price of these AI-related stocks. I think part of the problem is every single one of these large language models suffers from the same three problems: hallucinations, lack of common sense, and bias induced by the very nature of the data it's trained on. And so far, no one's found a solution for any of this. I'll also text you some more details on it.
Thanks very much indeed. For a moment, I was wondering if you were talking about the AI models. In other words, the software or the people who created them. Because you look at some of the language that is used and you think, well, hallucination might well start to apply there. Well, your thoughts on that? I mean, I do find, I understand the excitement, but we've seen this before. There's lots of froth and it takes a while for people to really know which direction things are going to go. And I don't know if we're quite there yet. I'm not saying there's not going to be big changes from AI. Of course they are. I'm just saying I don't see the shape of it yet. And that maybe is the issue. 20 minutes now to 7.
EWN Sport.
Solakela, good evening. Celebrations sort of at OR Tambo, but meanwhile, other cricket on the go in Pakistan?
Absolutely, Stephen. And the home side have been set a victory target of 264 to win their first ODI against the Proteas. They're currently at the crease on 169 for the loss of 3. That's in the 33rd over. They need 95 runs from 17 overs to win. Currently batting is Rizwan on 38 alongside Aga on 25. Earlier, Quinton de Kock top scored with 63 as South Africa were all out for 263 in 49.1 overs. Switching over to football, where Sports Minister Gayton McKenzie says he's satisfied with SAFA's explanation regarding the yellow card debacle involving Tebogo Mokoena during 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifying. McKenzie risks being accused of political interference, having written a letter to the association demanding accountability for fielding an ineligible player against Lesotho, which resulted in a 3-point and 3-goal deduction.
Team manager Vincent Seka, who has taken responsibility for the oversight despite numerous extenuating circumstances. He was not present when the second card was issued, as he has left the field to fetch ice for the players. That extraordinary coincidence tells us something deeper, that our national team is operating under immense strain with far too few hands doing far too much work. Despite the tremendous progress on the field and positive results, Bafana are still under-resourced.
McKenzie also says it's not guaranteed that Kyalami will host a Formula One race if South Africa is successful in being added to the calendar. The bid steering committee will meet with the sports governing body at the end of January next year as they ramp up their attempts to be one of the stops during the 2027 season.
Corporate South Africa has come through with 2.1 billion, but we have subsequently learned that there's still other issues. The discussion is not final that it's going to be Kyalami. Different cases are being made by other provinces, including Free State has put in, and Cape Town has come with a very compelling bid. F1 was clear. Sort out your house issues where this thing is going to be. When we meet you in January.
4 games are scheduled in the Bedway Premiership this evening, including Kaizer Chiefs against Orbit College. Inacio Miguel has discussed the pressure on the Glamour Boys to deliver success this campaign, with the team also competing in the CAF Confed Cup.
I don't agree when you say pressure. I think it's a privilege. I think it's a award of what we have done last season to be able to play this CAF Confederations Cup, you know. But of course, it brings a lot of responsibility. I will change the word from pressure to responsibility. We have a big responsibility in terms of representing South Africa in the continent. So, of course, our focus right now is that we can't disappoint our supporters from that, you know. At least the minimum that we have to give, it's the image of a hard work team that wants to win every single game in the group stage.
And it's match day 4 in the UEFA Champions League, with the pick of the game seeing holders PSG up against Bayern Munich while Liverpool host Real Madrid. The Anfield clash is a reunion for former Reds Trent Alexander-Arnold and Xabi Alonso.
You know, he has to have his own feelings and he has to enjoy it as well his own way. So I'm not going to tell him how he needs to feel it. His history is a little bit different from mine. He's born and bred in Liverpool. He's coming for the first team, winning the Champions League. So he deserves to enjoy that moment because it's nice to be back, and for him it's going to be nice.
Tola Gilimganga, Eyewitness News Sport.
At Auto & General, we understand your business is built on more than just vehicles. It's your stock, tools and equipment, and the premises where you work. Auto & General Business Insurance is designed for businesses like yours, protecting your assets against fire, theft, storms, and other unexpected events. To protect your livelihood, visit autogen.co.za and get an obligation-free business insurance quote. Auto & General, never not there. Auto & General is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
What do partners of the Gates Foundation do when facing the world's toughest challenges? They keep going. From discovering a plastic drape that helps detect excessive postpartum bleeding faster, to developing better bed nets to kill malaria-carrying mosquitoes, to researching an RSV vaccine that could save hundreds of thousands of children. For every problem, there are people who prove that progress is possible. The Gates Foundation, partners of human potential. Learn more at gatesfoundation.org/keep going.
Small businesses are anything but small. They're the backbone of our communities, the dreamers, the doers, the ones who keep Mzansi moving forward. That's why 702 and Capitec Business Banking are putting them in the spotlight. Every Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m., catch Small Business Focus with Capitec, where we showcase the hustle, heart, and the secrets to thriving in today's economy. Your vision matters, and with Capitec, you're never building it alone. Small Business Focus with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Thursdays between 6 and 8 p.m. on 702. Capitec Bank is an authorized FSP 4669. 702. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
Just going to quarter to 7. I'll be very interested in your view on this next topic on 072 702 1702. Over the last few weeks, I'm sure you've seen and heard several different studies of the impact of online gambling in our society. And to my slight surprise, but not entirely, I think perhaps the strongest critique so far has come from Budget Insurance. They've been looking at all of the research that's been done. They've conducted their own analysis. This is what Budget Insurance say. They say, what may start as entertainment is rapidly becoming a silent wealth destroyer. And that instead of funding education, property, savings, or investment, billions are being channeled into a cycle that delivers little return and, for many, long-term financial regret. I can't imagine any language that's more condemnatory of online gambling than that. Tando Ngibe is a senior manager at Budget Insurance. Tando, good evening. It's a very, very strong comment that you've made. What are you basing it on?
Thank you for having me, Stephen. Now, Stephen, I think everyone would have heard in the last couple of weeks the numbers that have been released. I think last year we spent around 1.5 trillion on gambling in a single year. And, the backdrop of this is that South African households already save at a rate that is far lower than global standards. In fact, most households are spending more money than they earn, essentially relying on debt to bridge the gap. And when you see this much of money being spent on gambling, I think it has to be a cause for concern for all of us.
There are some people who will say, but when I gamble, I also win. So I don't just lose, I also win. And I mean, isn't that what keeps people gambling? That I might win this time?
No, sure. I think it's a big contributor to how people view gambling, which is part of the problem. Because I think what we see a lot of, even in our own environment, is a lot of selective reporting. Gamblers tend to highlight wins because they're more socially rewarding and they reinforce a positive message. But losses are generally hidden. Not many people come out and say, I lost this much money before I finally won. And I think it's important for South Africans to understand that, and it's our job to ensure that we educate the public that gambling is not an investment strategy.
I mean, it's mangling a very old quote from a long time ago, but in gambling, your successes are very public and your disappointments are very private. And generally speaking, very few people are going to win R1 million or a car or whatever it is that's on offer this week. In fact, statistically, almost nobody, but almost everybody is going to lose.
That is exactly the point, Stephen. I think if you ask around the table anyway, ask if anybody knows a person who's won a massive jackpot, chances are we don't. All we hear about is in the newspapers when they tell us that somebody has won. And I think what is even more interesting is the study that was done by Experian and Volt is now starting to show that the rate of default on credit is significantly higher amongst gamblers than non-gamblers. And gamblers are also starting to default at a quicker rate, which speaks to an even bigger problem that says that money that should be going towards financial obligations is starting to possibly be channeled towards gambling.
Do you believe there's a need for stronger regulation? I mean, I'm still slightly surprised that this is currently done through the provinces. And I in my own view, if you can't remove online gambling, and you probably can't, it needs to really be done by national governments. Do you agree with that? I mean, does it need to move away from the provinces? Does there need to be at least some sort of change?
I agree. I think that's what should happen. If you look at some of the discussions starting to take place in Parliament, I think some of the political parties in Parliament are starting to raise similar concerns. I do agree with you. I don't think that banning it is the way to go, because I think that could create other problems such as illegal gambling. But I think we need to place the responsibility on the gambling organizations to ramp up consumer education. And the rest of us in the private sector should also play a role in ensuring that consumers are as well informed as possible. But policymakers definitely need to intervene and provide some more direction in this matter.
Sean Summers, the CEO at Pick n Pay, he's written recently in the last day or so that he thinks there should be a ban on the advertising of online gambling. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there's been some countries in places like Europe that have gone for full or partial bans on gambling advertising. Some people have even gone as far as banning gambling on credit cards to prevent people from, wagering with money they don't have. I don't think I've got a view on whether we should ban it completely or not, Stephen, but I do think that these are the discussions that Parliament needs to take very seriously and figure out how do we safeguard already financially compromised South Africans from an even bigger problem.
Tando, I'm one of those people who believes that corporates in South Africa should be actively involved in the society in which they trade. So I accept that this is quite an unfair question, but you are an insurance company. Why are you getting involved in this debate?
On our side, Stephen, we really try and look out for the financial well-being of our customers. And if you look at the amount of devastation that is caused by uninsured losses, and, in a country like South Africa, we've always operated under the understanding that people who are not insured, which is roughly 65 to 70% of motorists, are not insured purely because they cannot afford to be insured. And while I think that is true for a lot of people, the current data is also showing us that a lot of people are perhaps not making good financial choices. And I don't think it's only about insurance. I think some of this money should be channeled towards saving, investing in education for people themselves and their children before we spend on recreational activities such as gambling, because we know that there you cannot guarantee a return. Whereas if you use that money a bit more prudently, you might put yourself in a better position for the future.
Tando, really appreciate the time. Thank you. Tando Ngibe is a senior manager at Budget Insurance. As I say, their words, what may start as entertainment is rapidly becoming a silent wealth destroyer. I don't think I've heard language that's strong around online gambling. You may recall the conversation we had with the analyst on Friday, suggesting that 42% of people now want some form of action to be taken against online gambling. And my sense is that number is likely to rise. I am aware there is an argument in favor of online gambling, and as yet, you probably have not heard that argument much on the Money Show. We are going to try and speak to people to present that side of the argument, and particularly if this goes into the sort of sense that government and parliament and all the rest are going to act. We'll try and present that side of the argument to you. If you work in that industry, feel free on 011 883 0702 021 446 0567, or just your stories of gambling, you and your family, 072 702 1702. Corporates That Care promotes and encourages corporate leaders and all citizens to walk the talk for a better South Africa. Catch Corporates That Care this Wednesday at 10 to 9, featuring Happier. Their CEO, Gifton Kuna, will be in conversation with Bongani Bengwa. Join us every Wednesday as we highlight the efforts of companies and brands dedicated to building our country. Corporates That Care is a Prime Media Cares initiative with 702 and Prime Media Outdoor. 702, let's walk the talk and make a difference together.
You thought binge-watching hours of anime every weekend as a 39-year-old Zulu man would never pay off until your secret work crush said, "Do you know anything about Naruto?" Now, look at you. Origato and Sansei Sitore. Connected here, finding your favorites everywhere. Get the best Wi-Fi experience with prepaid fiber from OpenServe. No contracts, no credit checks. Ask your ISP for OpenServe fiber today. T's and C's apply.
Are you looking for the best spectacle and sunglass deal? With Specsavers buy one, get one offer, you get great value for money. Get a free pair of branded single vision prescription sunglasses up to 3,300 Rand when you purchase a comprehensive eye examination and spectacle frames with lenses on your first pair. The best part? Choose from top brands like Police, Hugo, Under Armour, Tommy Hilfiger, Red Bull Spect, and more. Affordable eye care? Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, advancing Red Rocket's ambitions with Discovery Green as the off-taker to power Africa's future through affordable, renewable energy.
6 minutes to 7, a calculation from the Minerals Council that mining is creating around 470 million rands worth of income for people who work in the mining sector. You can imagine all of the knock-on effects of that into communities, into children, into family members, etc. Tabelo Chabana is the Senior Executive for Public Affairs and Transformation at the Minerals Council. Tabelo, good evening. That's a sizable amount of money, nearly R500 billion. How did you come to this figure?
Good evening, Stephen. Good evening to you and all your listeners.
Yeah, Stephen, I think we've been criticized as an industry of not really talking too much about our contribution. So we worked with Quantec to look at our 2024 data to see, well, what is our contribution? Because, the industry is really one of those that if the industry grows, it really contributes tremendously to the South African economy. So yeah, let's talk to those figures. So the headline figure of 470 billion to contribution to household income is a combination of a few things. It's salaries paid, it's dividends, interest. So it's really quite a big figure put together. And I'd like to break some of the components down for you, if I may.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. Yeah.
firstly, if you look at household, let's look at wages first of all. So the mining industry is employing about 473,000 employees. And so if you assume maybe that, each person is supporting four family members, you're looking at about 1.9 million covered by the industry. So our wages in 2024 amounted to 195 billion. So that was that. And if you then look at those that are directly supplying goods to the mining industry, that number then on employment goes to about 874,000. And if you look at their dependents, then it's about 3.5 million. And so that number is even more extended. So the contribution of mining is really quite vast. And I want to stay still with wages. We pride ourselves, Stephen, in that we do actually provide well-paid jobs. I want to give you an example of what we call a category 4, which is like an entry-level underground unionized worker, in the gold, coal, platinum sector. Now, their average take-home pay is about 27,000 Rand a month, circa about 324,000 per annum. So now you compare that with any other sector of the economy, and we're talking an entry-level worker. You'll find that mining workers, lower skilled, medium, and on the upper end are earning more than their counterparts across.
Okay. No, sure. Tabelo, I mean, I can hear the unions warming up as we hear you already, but I do take the point. And I completely accept that mining matters to our economy. I do want to ask this, though. We're seeing a lot less exploration in South Africa than there used to be. I think the sort of figure that you hear touted all the time is that we're getting like 1% of the global exploration budget. We all know some of the reasons for that. Government says that it's dealing with the cadastral system. There are other changes. On current trends, do you expect there to be more exploration and thus more mining in the longer term and therefore a bigger contribution to our economy? Or do you actually see the contribution actually getting smaller? It does seem maybe that it will be getting smaller rather than bigger.
So there is a bit of a downward trend in terms of global exploration spend. But at the moment, I mean, if we look at 2024, only 781 million Rand was spent on mining, and this is down from its peak of 6.2 billion in about 2006. So Stephen, for a country with really such a potential and resources, we really boxing way below our capacity. So if we get things right, it can and should grow in mining. You've got the Council of Geosciences also doing a lot more exploration, which is important, especially in the Northern Cape. But Stephen, if we don't get certain things right, we're not going to attract that investment. You've mentioned the cadastre system. That's like a management tool that investors need, to be able to know where they can actually invest. Now, a lot of African countries, a lot of our neighbors have this. We don't have it. So we're missing out on even some of the basics, And then secondly, we've really got to make it, we've got to de-risk exploration. So when we say that we're requiring be at an exploration level, which has been the position in the past, well, again, you're not going to get people putting their risk capital there because there's no income coming in. So we've had quite a few you can say policy and maybe even operational challenges that were not promoting exploration. I think if we can sort this out with a revised MRD bill, which it looks like the DMPRE, our regulator, will let's sort out the policy environment. We've got the funds, the IDC, PIC that are going to be funding exploration. Let's get the management tool, the cadastral system in place. Then it should actually pick up, Stephen.
Tabelo, thanks so much. Tabelo Chabana, Senior Executive for Public Affairs and Transformation at the Minerals Council. You with the Money Show, 7 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. 3 more suspects involved in the Westbury shooting have been arrested for a double murder. This brings the total number of arrests to 5 in the October shooting of a group of teenagers in which 2 were killed and several others wounded. 2 other men believed to be the masterminds behind the attack were arrested earlier. Police spokesperson Brenda Muradili says those arrested are between the ages of 17 and 20.
The 17-year-old has been taken to a place of safety as per the Child Justice Act, while the 19 and 20-year-olds are in custody. They will join the first 2 accused before the Johannesburg Magistrate Court on 6 November 2025, facing charges of double murder and 5 counts of attempted murder.
Police have roped in ballistic expert Chris Mangena to probe the alleged shooting of Northwest businessman Brown Mokhotsi. Mangena is one of the experts who examined the physical and ballistic evidence in the murder case of former Bafana Bafana captain Senzo Meyiwa. Mokhotsi claims he was a target of an attempted assassination in Vosloorus on Johannesburg's East Rand last night. A red Chevrolet sedan, which the controversial businessman was supposedly driving during the shooting, is undergoing ballistic testing at the Vosloorus police station. Although multiple bullets struck the vehicle and 3 hit the driver and passenger seats, Mokhotsi escaped unharmed. Police spokesperson Athlenda Matis says the ballistic experts will release a report on the alleged shooting once evidence collection is complete.
The experts will tell us. That's why we have roped in Colonel Chris Mangena, who will be able to then provide a report as to what may have transpired and what is, probably the verdict on this particular incident.
Auditing firm PricewaterhouseCoopers insists it played no role in advising the Road Accident Fund to change its accounting standard, which has been ruled invalid by the High Court. A partner at the firm, Johan van Heesteen, has delivered brief testimony to Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts today. He says the firm believed the decision had already been taken by the board once PwC was hired to advise on its implementation. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
Johan van Heesteen has told Scoper's inquiry into maladministration at the RAF that he was not the one who engaged with the fund in 2021 when it requested a quotation and subsequently hired PricewaterhouseCoopers at a cost of almost 800,000 rand 2 weeks later. Committee Chairperson Zongezo Zibi was suspicious of the timeline of events, while Van Heesteen struggled to produce evidence of how PwC ascertained the board had approved the change in accounting policy before it was hired.
PwC was actually not required to advise at all in making that decision or in the decision to apply Ipsos 42.
MPs felt Van Heesteen was not the right person to answer their questions and that he was being assisted too much by the attorneys who accompanied him. The committee says it will now aim to obtain evidence from the former PwC partner who dealt directly with the matter, but who has since retired. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Parliament.
With about a year to go to the local government elections, the Electoral Commission says there are 508 registered political parties in the country. At least 62 of them were registered after last year's elections. This was revealed during the IEC's media briefing in Centurion today, where it updated the public on its preparedness for the upcoming elections. IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer Masego Sheburi says the Commission expects to register more parties as the elections edge closer.
In preparation for next year's election, the Commission has started a series of information and liaison sessions with unrepresented political parties, aspirant independent candidates, to share information on, among other things, the requirements to contest, how votes are translated into seats, and how to go about to register a party.
And Brazilian President Luiz Lula da Silva has today said he will call his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump again if talks between their countries do not progress by the end of the COP30, the United Nations Climate Conference Brazil is hosting this month. Lula and Trump met in Malaysia last month, seeking to overcome tensions between Brazil and the United States after Trump increased tariffs on U.S. imports of most Brazilian goods to 50% from 10% in August. Lula said that Vice President Geraldo Alckmin and Finance Minister Fernando Haddad are ready for a new round of negotiations and could travel to the U.S. if needed. Gold's trading at $3,970.32 an ounce. The rand's at 17.47 to the dollar, at 22.79 to the pound, at 20.08 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $64.44 a barrel.
Calvin Alex area, we still have roadworks causing about a 20-minute delay heading towards Germiston N3 southbound between the Peclu interchange and London Road, while in the mother city slow-moving traffic. M5 southbound between Pinelands and Kenilworth, also bumper-to-bumper traffic. M3, this is southbound between Rhodes Avenue and Newlands.
Look at your weather. Partly cloudy skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon thunder showers expected. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 14 degrees and peak at highs of 26. Pretoria is at 14 as well, reaching highs of 28. Vereeniging is at 15 and 27. It's said to be a partly cloudy day for the mother city as well, with moderate southeasterly winds at a low of 15 and a high of 26 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour: 3 more suspects involved in the Westbury shooting have been arrested for a double murder.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, advancing Red Rocket's ambitions with Discovery Green as the off-taker to power Africa's future through affordable, renewable energy. 7 minutes now after 7. Plenty to come in the next little while. We'll speak to the chief economist at ABSA, Jeff Gable. They've compiled the Africa Financial Markets Index. In a way, some of this is not rocket science. Countries that did proper reforms have weathered some of the recent storms, but the impact of that's still significant. We'll talk also about prospects for economic growth, quite a lot of optimism, it would seem. Dr. Rutindo Ndingwi, the founding director at Tribe Africa Advisory, he'll be looking at some of the big economic stories on our continent. One of them includes a data center, and another one includes tortoises. These were his suggestions, not mine. And then Warren Ingram, you'll hear him from 7:30, building your credit score. I don't know if you've ever sort of thought about it systematically, how you build your credit score. I have absolutely no idea how it works. 5-day cricket, I understand. Credit scores, not so much. 011 8830702 02144605667, and of course voice notes tonight on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
So, several reports from Fin24 and Business Live that the National Treasury has sort of dropped the idea of taxing foreign retirement benefits. The idea would be if you came to South Africa with a foreign pension, maybe you were a British or American citizen or something, you came here, you were getting a pension, you would be taxed on that as income. That's fallen away. It also would include, by the way, if you were South African, had worked overseas somewhere, were getting a pension from that country, you also would be taxed under the proposals. That's being dropped. I understand the suggestion from the National Treasury is they're still worried about what they call double non-taxation. And double taxation, as I'm sure you're aware, is when you get taxed twice on the same income. Many countries, including ourselves, have lots of treaties with other countries to make sure that that doesn't happen. You have a double taxation agreement to prevent that. They're talking here about double non-taxation. In other words, you would not get taxed on that income. Now, you put that together with the conversation we're having around inequality, and tax policy starts to get very messy indeed. On the face of it, though, I think the National Treasury doing the right thing in this case. The only consequence really would have been that people who were thinking of coming here, retiring here, using their foreign income in South Africa, and we particularly talk about sunbirds or swallows, people who come here for the summer months here, the winter months in the Northern Hemisphere, would probably have felt there'll be no point in doing that. It would have been one of the factors to decide, actually, we're not going to bother to do that. So on the face of it, probably good news. I'm willing to hear arguments that go the other way.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes.
Well, the Absa Africa Markets Index finding that countries that carried out some reforms have been able to weather the difficult financial environment better than countries that didn't. Also, countries that were able to make changes to their foreign exchange systems fared better as well. Jeff Gable is the chief economist at Absa. Jeff, good evening. You point out there's actually been quite significant progress in making foreign exchange markets more transparent. What changes have you seen across Africa?
Well, Stephen, thank you for the question. The development of financial markets in Africa is something we're really passionate about at ABSA. And FX market reforms, in the report this year in its 9th year, we've highlighted a number of really shining examples. And in that space, after a very difficult period for a number of years, I think Nigeria is probably the very best. So you've seen significant FX reforms over the last sort of year and a half. Some of them sort of sound very strange to South Africans. We're accustomed to the rand being volatile, but also very transparent. In Nigeria, we were in a position where there were multiple different exchange rate for exporters and importers and other vagaries in that space. Those exchange rates were all unified. The country got itself in a position where there was a $7 billion FX backlog. Now that would be an example, a global airline that sold tickets in Nigeria for international travel, and then the local affiliate wasn't able to pay on to the global airline those monies, and it risked, of course, airlines no longer even servicing the country. They've also done some work on sort of some quasi-fiscal operations that were happening in FX, but all of this has made an FX market that works smoother and easier. It's more transparent, and that's really critical for the most populous country in Africa. We've seen other important reforms as well. There's a global code of conduct in the foreign exchange market. It's a sort of a list of 55 items that countries can sign up to and say, we do that, we follow those guidelines, we're transparent in this way, and it gives confidence to investors, to corporates, to the man on the street that the market works smoothly and for them. And this year we've seen a number of countries enter into the FX Global Code of Conduct: Uganda, Ghana, Eswatini, Ethiopia. There's now 13 of the 29 countries in our index that follow that global best practice guide.
Obviously, it's in the interests of these countries. We see the consequences of reform. They're almost all good. How intense is the pain that you have to go through when you do the actual reform? So in Nigeria's case, how difficult was it for them to actually do it, to get to a better place?
Well, I suppose in that space with any reform, there's going to be winners or losers. If you were in a position in a country where you can buy foreign exchange at one price and be able to sell it for a much higher price somewhere else, then clearly a liberalization of that market, a bringing together of those two rates, an improvement in transparency is going to be something that pokes a bit of a hole in your business model. But on the other side of this, you have all of the corporates, importers, exporters, the man on the street in a country that relies in important ways on imports from the rest of the world. The whole system becomes extremely dysfunctional. So in that space, right, you have narrow interests that are probably going to be damaged by the reforms. You have a much broader public interest in these things moving forward. And I say I'm really pleased to see that Nigeria made very important strides in that area for the last year or two.
Are there commonalities among countries that are able to reform themselves? And I suppose where I'm really going with this, is there any kind of link between a more democratic state and a state more likely to carry out reforms, or does it not work like that?
I don't know that it would be sort of through the political lens that we'd want to look at this, but you do need a recognition and commitment that if as a country you want to make yourself as attractive as possible, not just to global capital, because often when we think about financial markets here on the continent, the first thing we ask is, well, are foreign investors coming in? Are foreign companies coming in and building a presence? But you also need well-functioning financial markets if you want to get at the very basic level, if you want to get money out of the mattress and into the formal economy. In other ways, if you want to get sort of the opportunities from formal savings in these economies to invest it here on the continent and not sent to the US to invest in US treasuries or sent to Germany to invest in German bonds, but to make a difference here in Africa. And so the whole purpose of the ABSA Africa Financial Markets Index is to provide to regulators and policymakers and politicians the information that shows where they're making good progress, where less, and critically, by having 29 African countries with more than 80% of the continent's population and GDP, by providing African examples for African countries of where progress is being made and what the positive benefits are. So this isn't an exercise where we say, well, look at Singapore or look at progress in Korea or look at China or Switzerland. We're saying if you are sat in East Africa and you are Kenya, look just a little bit to the west and see the enormous progress that a country like Uganda has had in our measures, moving from 10th place in the index just 5 years ago into the top 3 this year. See what you can learn from that. Let's adopt these things together, build a stronger Africa that's able to get that money in and put to work.
There seems to be, from your index, a fair bit of optimism for economic growth, and I realize we're in one of those eras where everyone says Africa will be the continent of the future. Do you think this optimism is well-grounded?
I am very much an African optimist. And so I know on a country-by-country basis, it's been a little bit of a difficult period. Here in South Africa, we're 15 years into an economy that's really struggling to grow. But if we look across the continent broadly, expectations are that over the next 3 years, and not at the end of that 3 years, but this average over the period, that Africa as a whole will not only grow faster than rich countries, and it won't only grow faster than emerging markets as a whole. There are a number of countries in that will grow 6% plus. So this really does feel like an opportunity. The story around Africa is often, unfortunately, colored by its largest economies. So we spoke a little bit earlier about Nigeria and important progress that's been made in FX, but there's many other macro reforms that Nigeria is doing much better on right now, providing a much more positive story for the continent's most populous country. Here in South Africa, we had updates in recent days from Rudy Dixon, the presidency, and talking about Operation Vulindlela and our excitement here about finally getting a number of reforms on the right track. We look at one of the other the continent's largest economies in Egypt, having come through a difficult period but growing very quickly now. And so often it's those big countries that are the face of Africa for the rest of the world. If we get the big ones churning a little bit better, it'll be easier for people to recognize the enormous economic growth of countries like Kenya, like Uganda, like Tanzania, the really positive stories of a Ghana or a Cote d'Ivoire or a Senegal. There's just so much to be optimistic about.
Jeff Gable, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. The chief economist at ABSA. And of course, perhaps one of our problems is getting our money out of our sofa and into financial markets.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
As the world's leaders meet for the G20 summit in Johannesburg, the eyes of the world will be upon us. Not just to South Africa, but Africa. It's the very first time that this summit has been held on our continent. What the world will see is a country building infrastructure that improves the lives of its people and lives up to the summit's themes of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. SANRAL's investment and projects ensure that we undertake this journey together with our neighbors. The N4 Maputo Corridor project stimulates trade to Maputo in Mozambique. The upgrade extends along the N4 to the Trans-Kalahari Corridor, growing trade for Botswana. The N7 from the Cape to Namibia is growing cross-border commerce, and the N1 project facilitates trade with Zimbabwe. The world will see an Africa that's building a better continent through roads. SANRAL, an agency of the Department of Transport.
Something big is happening when the family group chat explodes, like the Chamberlain Big Summer Splash promotion, on from 23 October to 9 November. 10% off finest 1903 paint mixing. That's incredible! Amazing deals on outdoor, braai, pool and camping gear. Even the dogs joining in with our social media puppy paw pick competition for a chance to win 1,000 Rand. And what's that? You can meet Bucky's Butter live in store at Centurion. Come make a splash with the whole family. Chamberlain, famous for hardware since 1903.
The Money Show. Africa Business Focus.
Africa Business Focus is brought to you by Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer, a global legal powerhouse. Well, Dr. Rotendo Ndingwi, the founding director of Tribe Africa Advisory. How's it, Rotendo? We're starting in Angola. The country's largest data center's been switched on.
Good evening to you, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners. Yes, so the data center, Stephen, is called Rexio. It's owned by Roha and Meridian, which is, and Roha is a big American company involved in infrastructure. The investment itself, Stephen, it's a data center. It's quite surprising. Angola is the last place you think a significant investment will go into a data center, but it's a $30 million plant, and it's one of 6 data centers in sub-Saharan Africa. And Angola is doing this because obviously they see the opportunity with regards to technology and penetration and utilization of technology as part of its broader economic strategy. I think the other upside is that obviously a data center needs energy. 70% of the energy being used is renewable energy. Obviously, power is not a problem in Angola. There's a lot of infrastructure investment going into power and energy. So it's a lot of ups there. And I think the reality for Angola, data is the new gold. Or is the new oil. Excuse the play on words that refers to Angola. But at the end of the day, a great investment, also diversification from the normal infrastructure around energy, oil, and gas. So a good story, I believe, for Angola as it continues to grow and develop and diversify its economy for the greater good.
Interesting to see how it plays out. We've been talking about the reforms we've seen in Nigeria a moment ago around foreign transactions. Now they've hit $50 billion in crypto transactions, and Ghana's moving to regulate crypto too.
Yeah, crypto is becoming quite a key player, Stephen, in terms of a place for transactioning for West Africa, specifically Ghana and Nigeria. Just to give you some stats, Stephen, in the past year alone, it's estimated about $50 billion of transactions went through crypto in Nigeria. On average, about 40% of adults have got assets in cryptocurrency. So that's quite significant. And when you look at the traditional capital market, the huge comparison, Stephen, only 4% have access to invest in the capital markets. And the reason for this, obviously, the process and the transaction on capital markets is a bit more rigorous, it's a bit more arduous. But with regards to cryptocurrency, the West Africans are preferring it because obviously it's fast, effective, and they've got direct control, especially in the high inflation as well as the high risk with foreign currency. Ghana, on the other hand, seeing the growth in Nigeria, Stephen, of the crypto market, is now also focusing with regards to investing and opening up a regulatory framework around this. At the moment, compared to Nigeria, it's only in the last year about $3 billion that has been transacted on that market space. But the penetration as compared to Nigeria, which is 4%, 17% of the population is investing quite significantly in the Nigerian market as well around crypto. Sorry, the Nigerian market is 40%, so it's actually more. But I think the long and short of it, Stephen, with access to Telegram and WhatsApp, which crypto allows you to transact on those platforms, there's a lot of significant opportunity for people to transact. And with countries that battle with infrastructure in the financial services market, crypto offers a way out. So definitely for Africa, at a larger extent, sub-Saharan Africa, the uptake has been quite significant.
Yeah, very interesting just to watch that. I mean, it's all about trust in the country's own financial system. And isn't that really going to be the big problem in Nigeria?
That is, Stephen, because people lose confidence. I mean, as I said, 2 key areas. One is the high risk of foreign currency, whether you're getting foreign currency in or getting foreign currency out. Also, with regards to the inflation, Nigeria, obviously, great opportunity, but a lot of risk. And crypto allows you to mitigate that risk to a certain extent. So if you see the uptake and you see the penetration of people transacting on crypto, it's quite significant. I think The estimation, and I'm just referring to Nigeria, Stephen, in the last year, 73% of Nigeria has owned crypto, and I'm talking about adults to one extent or not. So that's quite significant. But we know that Nigeria, when you look at the fintech space, when you look at technology, transaction, financial services, a lot of penetration there. So it's not surprising that crypto has had such a big uptake. But good to see Ghana is also following on board and also putting a regulatory framework, because that's the other thing. You want money to flow, but you want it to be accountable and traceable. Otherwise, you have a grey listing story when things get out of hand, like we had in South Africa, and that's not a great path to want to, or a hole you want to dig yourself out of.
Emirates is sort of talking up the number of people it's actually flown to Kenya. It's a big number.
6.6 million people, Stephen, over the last, I think since 1995. But it's not only people, Stephen, and I hope you on a regular basis do this, but they've also transported 16,000 tons of flowers to the Middle East and Europe in the last year. That's about, I think on average, that's about 4,000 tons per week, Stephen. But the point here, obviously Emirates seeing the opportunity with Kenya, East Africa, one of its big export markets is in the horticultural space, with a significant market in Europe, in the UK. So obviously this is a win-win, but just interested to see the volumes. You mentioned the weight of a rose or a petal, and then you quantify 16,000 tons. But it's a refreshing story with regards to opportunity there.
Indeed. And you need to talk to us, Rotendo, about the baby giant tortoises. I mean, you need to move them when they're still small.
Literally, when they grow to full size, Stephen, and they've been, I think about 13 babies have been cared for in Seychelles, and they've gone through a process of being germinated in Seychelles, but they grow to 250 kilograms. That's a quarter of a ton, and they live up to 100 years. So it's a lot of time and a lot of weight. But they've been close to extinction. These ones have survived in Seychelles because it's remote, because obviously they're always targeted for hunting in the ocean. But there's a body out there. The specific tortoise name, Stephen, is called the Alat giant tortoise, and it's about, I think, about 18 eggs that were identified and harvested through scientific support, and 13 of them survived, and they're growing and be looked after in Seychelles. Seychelles, as we know, is a small little island in the Indian Ocean, part of the African continent, but it plays a significant role with regards to just the ecotourism space. So it's a positive thing for Seychelles, a positive thing for the tortoises, but 250, I'm thinking of a pet. If you have a pet that can outlive you to 100 years and is 250 kgs, sure, it's literally food for thought. So, but a great story to end the night with.
No, very much so, Rotendo. Thanks very much indeed. So many different jokes about how you don't need to provide them with a home. Thanks very much indeed. Dr. Rotendo Ndingwi is, of course, the founding director of Tribe Africa Advisory and author of the book Rumble in the Jungle Reloaded. 27 minutes now after 7.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
Celebrating a decade in South Africa, global law firm Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer is committed to staying and growing on the African continent. The firm's reach is global, with 2,700 lawyers across 26 offices, bringing together local and international knowledge and insights to offer comprehensive legal services that meet your needs. Trust Herbert Smith Freehills Kramer for exceptional results in the transactions and disputes that matter most to your business. Visit hsfkramer.com for more info.
Coming up,
The Aubrey Masango Show
on 702
and Cape Talk.
Aubrey Masango, good evening. What's coming up tonight?
I tell you what always stumps me, the difference between a tortoise and a turtle.
One swims and one doesn't. Okay. I think that's the difference.
Is it really the difference?
Yes, the turtle swims and the tortoise doesn't.
But they're all like...
I don't know what the tortoise actually does, though, because, I mean, it's not like they walk very fast.
They all hide their heads in that little house.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. What's happening on the show tonight?
I shouldn't tell the story, but a friend of mine had a tortoise that escaped. And I'm like, over what, a month?
Oh, Stephen's on fire this evening. Listen, let me tell you what's on the show this evening. Oren Singh, Eyewitness News reporter, together with Professor Kiriboni Paho, who's a political analyst, come to talk to me about what's going on at the Madlanga Commission. More and more revelations coming out of that space. Lesetja Dikhale, a South African technology entrepreneur, founder and CEO at Mechanic, joins me in the second hour to talk about the value of entrepreneurship in the South African economy as, I suppose, traditional spaces are not providing the jobs that are required by our economy. And we look at entrepreneurship and how it can assist in that space. And then Professor Judah Mukonye, author and head of the Division of Mathematics Education at the Wits School of Education, joins us in the third hour. And we look at how blended education changed after COVID-19. And that's the show tonight.
Thanks very much indeed, Aubrey Masango, on your radio from 8 o'clock. Just gone 7:30, time for the latest Eyewitness News. Marky, good evening. The Electoral Commission's budget.
That's right, Stephen. The Independent Electoral Commission has set aside 2.1 billion rand for the upcoming local government elections. The elections could be held between November 2026 and January 2027. At a media briefing at the IEC headquarters today, the Commission said it's preparing for every possibility. Over the years, the Commission has complained about funding cuts which have limited its work. But IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer of Outreach, Mawetu Moseri, says consultations with Treasury and the Finance Minister are ongoing.
At this stage, we do not feel major constraints in us delivering a credible election for the country. With the budget available, we will do so.
Embattled crime intelligence boss Timsana Khumalo claims the takedown operation at the home of Sandton businessman Katiso Katie Molefe was deliberately not shared with the Hawks. Khumalo told the Madlanga Commission in Pretoria today that the investigation revealed a member of the Hawks, only identified as Zungu, was allegedly working with the Big Five cartel. On December 6th, members of the Gauteng Counterintelligence Operations Unit and Political Killings Task Team conducted 2 operations at the homes of Molefe and tender tycoon Vusmusi Kat Matlala. The Commission previously heard that members of the Hawks arrived at Molefe's Sandhurst mansion, demanding to know what was going on. It's alleged former Hawks boss Godfrey Lebeya instructed members to find out what was happening at Molefe's home after it emerged that there was a possible bogus police operation taking place.
During our investigation and intelligence collection, we had picked up that they might be those individuals from DPCI environment that are involved.
Khumalo, who led both operations at Molefe and Matlala's homes, elaborates further regarding the concerns about possible collusion from the side of DPCI.
There is an individual, a Zungu, that is from Toms of DPCI, that is working with the cartel. So even before the takedown, we had that red flag that we need to protect this investigation against DPCI.
Khumalo is set to resume his testimony at the Commission tomorrow. And Starbucks says it will sell control of its operations in China to Boyu Capital in a deal that values the business at $4 billion. This marks one of the largest divestments of a China unit by a global consumer company in recent years. The Seattle-based coffee chain says the funds from investment firm Boyu will help it jumpstart growth in the world's second largest economy, where local rivals like Luckin and Coty now offer lattes for less than a third of Starbucks' prices. Under the deal, Boyu will hold up to 60% of a new joint venture, while Starbucks will hold 40% and continue to license the brand and intellectual property to the venture. The U.S. firm said the value of the retail business in mainland China, including proceeds from the sale, the value of its retained stake and likely licensing income over at least the next 10 years, will total more than $13 billion. Its shares fell 3% in early trading today. Starbucks has been credited with creating the market for coffee in China after entering in 1999. But according to data from Euromonitor International, its market share there has tumbled to 14% last year from 34% in 2019. A look at your weather. A partly cloudy Wednesday in store for Gauteng tomorrow with afternoon thunder showers expected. Temperatures will drop to overnight lows of 14 and 15 degrees and peak at highs between 26 and 28 degrees. Cape Town said to be partly cloudy with moderate southeasterly winds at a low of 15 and a high of 26 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. The Independent Electoral Commission has set aside 2.1 billion rand for the upcoming local government elections.
Corporates That Care promotes and encourages corporate leaders and all citizens to walk the talk for a better South Africa. Catch Corporates That Care this Wednesday at 10 to 9, featuring Happier. Their CEO, Gifton Kuna, will be in conversation with Bongani Bengwa. Join us every Wednesday as we highlight the efforts of companies and brands dedicated to building our country. Corporates That Care is a Prime Media Cares initiative with 702 and Prime Media Outdoor. 702, let's walk the talk and make a difference together.
Time. When you're a kid, it moves slower than a sloth trying to get through airport security. There is just so much of it. Skip forward a few years to your 20s. Time is still your friend. It says have some balance. Go party and have fun. Then your 30s hit. And time suddenly steps on the accelerator like it's trying to catch a traffic light before it goes red. 40s. Now time is moving faster than your 10-year-old on a sugar high. 50. You're desperately trying to save as much as you can, but time is moving so fast. And all you can think is, where did all the time go? That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time for some much-deserved you time. Now, isn't that a compelling enough reason to invest? Ellen Gray. Long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
A man driven to the edge. I don't know where you are. I don't know who you're with. When his beloved takeaway was taken away. I will look for you. I will find you. And I will eat you.
It's the summer of stars at Simply Asia. Stand a chance to win a Toyota Starlet when you spend 200 Rand or more on our famous flavors. Order now. Simply Asia, connecting the Thai way.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
The Personal Finance feature is brought to you by Sanlam Corporate. They take employee benefits personally because when you care, everyone benefits. Sanlam Corporate. Well, don't forget, if you've got a question for Warren tonight, you can send us a voice note if that's easier on 072 702 1702. Calls too, of course, on 011 883 0702 and 021 446 0567. Tonight, we're concentrating on how to build and improve your credit score. Warren, good evening. Quite a lot of myths around credit scores, actually. I suppose we need to start with, what is a credit score? We all know it's very important, but I have no idea how they compile. So what is it?
And we often don't even know why they're important. We just know everyone tells us they're important. It really is a score, and very often it starts, well, for all of them, it starts at 0, and then it goes up to, in some cases, a maximum of 743 or 999. So it depends, because we get these ratings from credit bureaus. So depending on the credit bureau, your maximum score will be one of those, 743 or 999. And what happens is a credit bureau will give you a ranking, and the higher the ranking, the better your credit score. In other words, the more credit worthy you are. And it's a score that's then used by banks and other businesses to determine if you're a good person for them to lend money to, or are you going to be risky, and equally, should you be avoided as someone to lend money to? So your statement's right, Stephen. It's a critical number for us if we live in the world of debt.
Okay, so if your score is higher, the better it is for you. You are more likely to get credit.
Exactly right. So your starting point is you're not applying for debt, for no reason. You're looking for debt either to buy a car or, a house or something. And so you want the highest score possible. If you do, it means that the institution that does the lending, so usually a bank, will say that's okay. We'll give you the debt. So that's step one. The higher the score, the better chance you've got of actually just getting debt. Equally, if you've got a high score, it might mean that they give you a slightly better interest rate, because the banks won't always just say no. So if you've got let's say an average score, you only score 600 or 650 or something, it doesn't mean that the bank won't lend you money at all, but they might say, this is quite a risky person for us to lend money to. So what we're going to do is we're going to charge them a higher interest rate, because we have to get paid for the extra risk that we're taking to lend to this person. Whereas someone else who's got a better credit score and is perceived to be lower risk, well, we can lend to them and we can charge them a slightly better rate because our risk is lower, and so we don't need to be rewarded for taking extra risk.
How important is how much money you've borrowed in the past? So if you're starting out, say you're just leaving home, you just finished school, and you have never borrowed money in your life, which is very likely. When you turn 18, you won't have been allowed to borrow money before. What happens then?
The irony in all of this is that you might be a fantastic credit risk. In other words, you're somebody, in your example, you've never borrowed before, you've never needed to, and you've got positive cash flow. So you've got no debts, you don't owe anybody any money, and you want to borrow a little bit of money. And so you go and apply, and it turns out that you get turned down because you've got 0 credit score, or they might give you a score of 100 out of 700 or 100 out of 1,000. So that's the one situation. Or on the other side, you might be somebody who says, well, I'm happy to just start work and I don't borrow from anybody. And at the age of 30 or 35, you've built up a nice deposit on a house. You've never borrowed from anybody because you've been saving diligently. And then again, you pitch up at the bank and you say, I want to borrow money to buy a house. And then they go, well, we've never heard from you before. You've never borrowed from us before. So, you're a high risk person. We don't want to lend you money, or we're going to charge you a fortune in interest because you just have no credit history with us.
Okay, then how do the banks know? So for example, I'm going to a clothing store and I want to put something on HP, which I know from last week we shouldn't do. And then so I want to do that. And they check my credit score. Where does the information that is used to compile my credit score come from? What I'm really trying to get to is, I've always believed the bankers are in it together, and this is clearly proof that they are.
There is so there are these businesses, they're called credit bureaus, and what they do is they build up a history of your treatment of your debts, and what they look at is what debts have you had in the past. So have you, for example, did you start out with a cell phone account, and how did you pay that cell phone account? Were you paying it on time with the right amounts? You didn't underpay. Or alternatively, were you irregular? So you were a bit late with payments, or missed, every third or fourth one. And if you were disciplined and you paid on time and you paid what was required and you always paid the right amount on the right day, then that means you've started to build up a history, and that history stays with you for a period of time, and that will then start to build up. Equally, if you were late and irregular, then that history also stays with you and starts to build up over time. And that will be a bad score. You'll start to build up a credit history that's not good, and therefore compromises your score.
Okay, so then I've never sort of seen, so if, for example, I have something that I pay for monthly, so say just a cell phone subscription rather than pay as you go, or prepaid rather. So if you have an account that you pay every month, the fact that you pay that, even though you're never actually in debt, so in other words, I'm not paying back money, I'm paying what I owe every month, that goes towards the credit history?
Yeah, that's and it's often one of the pieces of advice that we're given is if you haven't got a credit score, open an account. So not a debt. Don't go and borrow, but you can open an account and then start to build up a history of using that account correctly and paying it off as you go. And the reason why that works is because let's use the cell phone example. You're actually using the cell phone services for that month, and then you're paying them at the end of the month. So in a kind of roundabout way, you are borrowing money, I would guess, from the cell phone company because you're using their services, and then you have to pay it back and pay what you owe. And so building up a good history over a long period of time of paying what you owe is a good way to then build up the credit history. Equally, that if you don't do it, I think maybe one consolation here, if you've got some history of not paying your store cards or your accounts on time, that history starts to fade as time passes. In other words, it might really harm your credit score, in the first 3 months after you've not stuck to the program. But after 18 months, it harms you less, and after 2 years, it might disappear from your history. So fortunately, time is on your side as you go with these things.
Okay. The biggest debt most of us will have is probably a bond repayment or a mortgage. Does that get a greater weight if you are paying that regularly because it's so big? What I'm trying to sort of understand is people who, I would just presume that people who are making a decision about whether to lend Stephen money or not, the first question probably wouldn't be, is he paying his cell phone? It's, is he paying his bond?
Exactly, and because it's such a large amount, if you are sticking to the repayments, or if anything, maybe paying a little bit more, and so doing more than what's required, that will really help you on a credit score, because it shows the banks that you're able to juggle the needs of paying for your food and all the other things that you need to do, as well as your mortgage, and you're doing it on time or ahead of time, and so certainly that will boost your score quite a lot. Also, if you're not using your debt facilities to 100%, in other words, you've got a mortgage, but you owe 3 million rand, you're only using 2.7 million, and you're paying it down. It shows that you're not, absolutely at the maximum limit all the time. So a bit like driving, you don't want to drive your car at maximum speed all the time. That's going to break your car. And it's the same with debt. If you have a facility which allows you to borrow 3 million, but you only use 2.7, it means you've got room to breathe, and it means that you're obviously in control of things. Then equally, that you're paying it down and on time, that starts to boost your score. And the longer you do that, the longer you have that relationship with the bank, and the longer that bond goes on, so your history gets improved, because they'll look at that and say, you've had a bond for 8 years, you've never missed a payment, you're paying a bit of ahead of schedule. That's a very good score. That's a very good idea. Whereas, as you say, if you've got a cell phone account and you're spending 300 rand a month, very different story. Even though you're disciplined, it's not going to rank as high as paying off 3 million rand bond.
Sorry for the technical questions about how it works, but if I have a bond with Bank A, and now I'm trying to get credit from service provider B, how on earth, isn't there a legal issue that they now know what I'm doing on my bond, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, so you need to be very careful here. You have to be clear and transparent when you're borrowing money, or you're applying to borrow money, because you might think no one knows what's going on, but the credit bureaus are collecting your data, and so it will be found out if you're saying, I've got no debts. Meanwhile, you've got a big bond with one company, and you're going to go and borrow money from another company to buy a car. That will really harm you if you start to lie on your credit applications. That's going to be really detrimental. So don't assume that if you deal with two different financial institutions that your data is not being collated. The credit bureaus work across all of these institutions, and so that's the very first thing that a bank will do, is they will take your credit application and then input it into the credit bureau to see, are you creditworthy, and if that comes up that you've either forgotten, which, it'd be quite tough to say, I forgot about my bond. You should know about it. In other words, you're not reliable, you're not honest, then that's going to either prevent you, they might not lend to you at all, or if they do, they're really going to charge you, a huge interest rate.
Does the type of debt and the variety of accounts matter? So in other words, if I just have a bond and a cell phone account, so that's not very diverse, am I going to get a different score to if I have a bond, a cell phone account, a car, this, a Foschini, that, or whatever?
I feel like I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit. So the variety of accounts does help you. So if you've got, to use your example, a few different accounts, including a bond and a credit card, etc., and you're paying them all off on time and you're managing that, so you're juggling that load correctly, that will certainly count in your favor, provided you're not using up your entire salary to pay off all these debts. So if you're managing your accounts well and you have got a variety, and you've still got the financial capacity to deal with that, then you're in the pound seats as far as getting probably a brilliant credit score. Equally, if you've got a whole bunch of different kinds of accounts, and you're using up your entire salary to pay them all off, then that might start to harm you, because it means that you actually can't afford the debt that you've got, and at some point the road is going to run out on you, and you're going to get yourself into trouble. So it is good to have a variety of accounts, and certainly managing them well and managing them affordably will enable you to get a very good credit score, and that might help you improve interest rates on home loans and all of those things. So I do like the having the variety. I think it works, but just be very careful that you don't suddenly get yourself into trouble with too much debt.
We're speaking to Warren Ingram, the co-founder at Galileo Capital, a certified financial planner. How to improve your credit score tonight. Your questions for him, 072-702-1702. I've got a slightly different question. It's from JP. Warren, he asks, my financial advisor is offering me a unit trust that charges performance fees. I see from the information they sent that this fund has a total expense ratio of 6%. This seems way too high. 6% too high? We'll find out from Warren in just a moment. 10 minutes to 8. In a world where a lot can change in 6 years, you can rest assured knowing that Hino's 6-year drivetrain warranty won't. All Hino trucks now come standard with a 6-year drivetrain warranty, protecting your investment all the way from pistons to gears. Built to keep your business moving, supporting uptime, growth and daily operations, because although a lot can change in 6 years, their warranty promise won't. T's and C's apply. Hino, all the way.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable. You receive up to 745,000 Rand worth of legal services per year. Our range of plans include cover for you, your spouse, children, and extended family. Plans include cover for civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Whether it's protection orders, gender-based violence, uncontested divorce, or poor service, your Clientele Legal lawyer will be there to assist you. Our services are convenient. Simply pick up the phone and call your lawyer, or send us an email and we'll get back to you. All plans include a bail benefit of up to 5,000 Rand, and we'll go to the police station and pay it for you. Plus, Clientele Legal offers you 24-hour telephonic legal advice. SMS Legal to 48721. That's legal to 48721. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Calling all wedding planners and venues, restaurants, conference centers, and hotels. Do you need tables and chairs? Home in One has it all. Do you need cutlery, crockery, table linen, and restaurant equipment? Home in One has it all. Do you need tents, gazebos, or umbrellas? Home in One has it all. Affordable prices, the latest trends, with 2 branches in Pretoria and Johannesburg. Shop online at homein1.co.za, because we're your number one choice. Home in One has it all.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, advancing Red Rocket's ambitions with Discovery Green as the off-taker to power Africa's future through affordable, renewable energy.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
We're talking about how to build a good credit score tonight. But Warren, first JP's question. My financial advisor is offering me a unit trust that charges performance fees. The fund has a total expense ratio of 6%. It seems high. Is that quite high?
That's I can't use rude words. It's very high, very, 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 very high, Stephen. Very high. So maybe just to explain, when you buy a unit trust, the product provider, the fund manager, will typically charge you a fee somewhere around, let's say for a fund that invests in shares, they'll charge you a fee of about 1 to 1.5 or 1.7%. And if they only charge you that annual management fee, that's the fee you're going to pay. You might pay a little bit of extra money for transaction costs within the fund, and that's how you get to something called the total expense ratio. It's all the fees all in. But when you come to a fund manager that says, well, we're not going to charge you a flat fee at just a percentage of 1 or 1.5%, we're going to charge you a performance fee. What they typically do is they charge you, let's say, 1% or 1.5% or something per year. And then they actually take a share of the profits that they make on your investment as well. And typically it'll be done over, let's say, a typical 3-year period or a 1-year period. So they won't just do it for what, for a profit generated over a month. They'll calculate it over a longer period and then take a portion of that as a performance fee. And the idea is, you don't pay that much when the growth is not good. So when the growth is poor, you pay less. But when you've generated a lot of growth, then the fund manager takes a portion of that growth as part of the kind of win-win explanation. Not my favorite way of charging. It's what hedge funds do, and that's why I don't invest in hedge funds. The richest people on Wall Street are the ones that charge lots of performance fees, Stephen. So I think it's kind of a universal thing around the world, is that the fund managers that charge performance fees tend to make themselves a lot of money. They become the ones that buy the big mansions. And to me, I much prefer a fund that charges a flat percentage, 1% or 1.5% or something like that. So yes, 6% is very high. It's not unethical from the point of view that all of this stuff is disclosed. It's very transparent. You know exactly what the fees will be before you go in, and they are transparent in the way that they calculate them. So they're not doing anything dodgy. And of course, it's your choice. If you're JP and you want to go in, you might look at the fund and say, it's delivered fantastic growth. I want to participate. What you need to remember is you're participating at a time when they're charging 6% after they've delivered great returns. So you're coming in, there's no guarantee that you're going to get great returns in the next 12 months or the next 3 years. So you might be paying a high fees for performance that you didn't benefit from. So you've got to be very careful with performance fees. And some fund managers try to make it fairer, where they charge nothing when your fund hasn't grown, and maybe they let you recover some of the lost growth before they start to charge you fees again. So there are fund managers that try to make this fair. But I mean, the simple, very quick answer to someone like JP is 6%. Yes, that's very high for a total expense ratio.
It does sound like it. We've got a voice note tonight on 072 702 1702.
Good evening, Stephen, and the 702 listeners. I just wanted to ask, is it possible for maybe a bank to be charged for reckless lending to an individual? Because I don't see, is there anyone regulating the banks in this regard, rather in terms of reckless lending?
It's a great question, Warren. I mean, someone with a very bad credit score suddenly gets given a lot of money, often a lot of advertising around this. I presume there's something you can do?
So this is regulated under the National Credit Act, and why I like the question is because I don't see. I mean, I can't recall in the last 2 or 3 years kind of splashy headlines about the regulator taking the banks on and some banks getting fined for reckless lending. So it feels to me that, yes, the act might be there, the regulations are there, and we see the regulators being very strict on things like FICA, where they do, identification and money laundering protection, all of that stuff. But I just don't see lots of, kind of this reckless lending regulation. So it feels to me that the laws might be there. I will say I'm a little bit ignorant as to how effectively they're being policed and whether the banks are getting into trouble for this. But if we look at how many people are in severe debt trouble, my kind of anecdotal evidence is I don't think that this is being regulated as well as it should be.
We've got a minute left. How do you build a good credit score very quickly?
The one thing you can do is you can go to a bank and say, I'm going to give you in a savings account 2,000 Rand, and I'm going to let you keep that as let's say as a surety. It's called a secured loan. So it's my money. I'm letting you hold on to it. Please, will you give me a credit card and give me a credit limit of 2,000 rand? If I get myself into huge trouble and I can't pay off the debt, you've already got my 2,000 rand as surety. And so for the bank, this is extremely low risk. This is a secured loan. But what it allows you to do is to start building up a history of actually managing a credit card well and showing the bank and the credit bureaus that you are disciplined and good with money. So if you don't really like the idea of borrowing, you can then use a secured loan, and that kind of gives you a very nice safety net, and then start to build up the credit history, maybe just for the bond when you need it one day. Sure.
Warren,
and then maybe just make sure you don't overborrow.
Warren, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. The co-founder of Galileo Capital. Decision makers like yourself help the South African workforce plan beyond payday. The Sanlam Umbrella Fund gives employees a clear path from payslip to pension with free retirement benefits, consulting and other value-added benefits. You get supported every step. They get dignity in retirement. That's care in action. And when you care, everyone benefits. Partner with Sanlam Corporate by visiting sanlamcorporate.co.za. Build South Africa's age of confidence together.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB, advancing Red Rocket's ambitions with Discovery Green as the off-taker to power Africa's future through affordable, renewable energy.
Still looking negative in the US right now. The Dow Jones down 0.55%, the Nasdaq down nearly 1.6%, and the S&P 500 down 0.99%. Downbeat forecasts from two big CEOs, and of course, Palantir seems to be losing some of the froth. Well, we'll have more on that, of course, tomorrow. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. A white BMW registered to the office of suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner Shadrack Sibiya was the main focus during today's testimony before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Crime Intelligence boss Tumsani Kumalo continued with his testimony before the commission in